Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks to all the technical support that I've received already in this training. So this is a presentation about managed file transfer, our little branded name for MoveIt, DMZ, and also inclusive of MoveIt Central, I suppose, which is a companion product. I'm Brian Wiggum, and I guess we'll jump right into it. But first, I wanted to tell a story about a young man who he wanted to be a writer all of his life, and he really just wanted to pull and tug at the heartstrings of the hearts of men. He really wanted to bring up all their emotions and strike fear into them and everything. And so he got a job with Microsoft and wrote error messages for them. So to compensate for, kind of boring presentations, sometimes people tell jokes and bring cookies. So I brought some cookies.
Sorry to everybody on the WebEx.
Yeah, sorry to the WebEx. Here's your cookie. Oops, wrong page here. So here's your virtual cookie. We only have an hour, and I'm sure that'll be plenty to bore you, but there are lots of different things we could talk about, and if you want to steer me a certain way, I'll try to talk about what you're asking about. This really is meant to be a training, but I kind of can't stand click-by-click training, so let's talk about what we need to, and if you need to go into more detail, ask, and let's click around. We'll probably get into the web interface of MoveIt. There's a web, an SSH, and an FTP interface to it, so we can talk to it in whatever way you'd like to see. We'll probably focus on the web just because it kind of gives you a good visual of how it's set up. So I'm going to go through a couple of videos. I hope that the mic here will pick up the audio of this YouTube video. And MoveIt, just a note here, MoveIt is our attempt to get away from FTU, which is kind of an in-house application, served us well for many years, and the IWS team, made different iterations and versions of it, and become a little unwieldy. And I guess I guess we could still use it if you can convince Ray and team to continue to support that, but maybe MFT is an alternative and might support most of your needs. Also, we have some old FTP services and some our Banner file manager, which is mostly FTP with some wrapper scripts around it. So that's what we're trying to get away from. So this is an overview of MoveIt DMZ in a couple of minutes. Oh man, look what I did.
MoveIt DMZ is designed to be the world's most secure managed file transfer server, enabling status-based file and data transfers between systems, applications, and people. It's engineered from the ground up for enterprise-level security. End-to-end encryption is 100% secure, and no third-party encryption technology is needed. All data is encrypted at all times, in transit and at rest. Administrators can enforce corporate authentication and password policies, including flexible 1-, 2-, or 3-factor authentication. Employees and external partners can be authenticated against multiple user databases simultaneously. Nothing happens on a MoveIt DMZ server without creating a record in the cryptographic tamper-evident database. All administrative and file transfer activities are logged for auditing and compliance. Secure two-way communications enable ad-hoc person-to-person messaging with attachments. Flexible architecture supports many network configurations, ranging from single to multi-tiered deployments. For mission-critical file transfer, MoveIt DMZ can provide automated failover and scalability with WebPosts support for high availability. Rich administrative and end-user web interfaces support advanced capabilities, such as user and file aging policies, administrative separation of duties, email notifications, and multi-gig file transfers. An API provides enterprise applications and developers with programmatic access to the MoveIt DMZ files, users, logs, and services. Every MoveIt DMZ includes over 90 built-in and schedulable reports for real-time visibility into file transfer operations. Combining MoveIt DMZ with the MoveIt Central workflow engine facilitates the automation and management of complex file transfer and processing tasks. Here's where to learn more about how your system's applications and
So that's a basic overview of the services that we're using. So again, MFT is just our branded name for MoveIt DMZ right now and MoveIt Central. We do have the license for MoveIt Central, and a couple of our administrators, what we call our folder administrators or project administrators, are using the MoveIt Central. Ryan Ross, John Young. So what you get when you kind of sign up as an administrator or as a project or customer of MFT is what I'm calling a project folder, and that is a top level folder in our system. And by default, we're handing out a folder structure like this. Everybody gets a common folder, and you get one for each school. So you have 30 folders. You are in control of all these folders. You can delete them or tell me not to provision them. But by provisioning them, we can kind of have a standard layout. And when you ask a question, I'm immediately familiar with what your folder structure is. I also apply certain privileges with a script with the API to all these folders. So ABAC can only download from prod downloads, and they can upload to prod uploads. So it's a lot of clicking amongst the 35 schools and 3 development tiers that you don't have to do yourself. If you think it'll be confusing for your users and you don't have any need for dev and test and business like that, you could just delete those 4 and rename prod and downloads and uploads. If you have any questions, just speak up. I'll be glad to take any questions. So our service name or URL is files.usg.edu, and you can sign in typically with your Active Directory credentials, your USO domain account. There's a few different ways to talk to it. That is with SFTP, FTPS, the API, and also there's MoveIt Sync and the web interface. So there's some limitations. This MoveIt Sync is a new tool that they've released, and if you're just managing one little folder and you want to sync it up to your desktop, this is a neat and useful tool. It's only for Windows, I think. It might have a Mac client, I'm not sure. So your duties as an administrator are these, and they all center around, this is your data, you're the data owner, we're just providing this file hosting service. So you're going to make sure that the permissions and the access are correct. And that includes, numbers 1 through 7. You're going to add and remove users. And what I'm talking about is in the MFT system, there's users there. And they're members of groups which are defined within MoveIt. There's also a corresponding user typically in Active Directory, and you'll request those USO domain accounts. So those USO domain accounts are really not for authorization, but for just authentication. That's what none of the groups are in AD. It's just pointing back at an AD user to authenticate. You're gonna, if you use SSH keys or any client certificates, you'll be managing those. You can manage the retention. You can set a folder to drop and delete files after 24 hours, things like that. And also, as far as you're going to kind of serve as mostly the first line of defense and first line of support for the end user. GoBest, for example, within Banner, there's no built-in file transfer utility. So that's why we have Banner File Manager. Hopefully, we'll be moving that into MFT here. And so, really, I think the GoBest team would prefer to treat MFT as just kind of an auxiliary service to Banner. So I'd still like for you all to interface with it, and only when there's some serious high-level problem with the service would you kind of call us. The help desk can kind of steer people towards my password to reset their domain accounts. So that's kind of the division of roles and responsibilities. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay.
I do have one question on the USO domain account users. Like, if you're a new admin and you submit your request, if they're already in, the script would just kick it back out?
Pretty much, right? Yes. It's no different than anything else. It'll just, if they exist already, and we typically give them the requester. We give them a list of all, because they have to have both the name and the account, so that they can match it and move it. So we give that back to them, in a form of spreadsheet or text or something. But so really it doesn't. There's no indication from us to them that the accounts already existed. We just give them the information that they're requesting. Create those that don't exist and just give them all usernames and passwords.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Did I skip anything? Oh yeah, so somehow I slid forward a little bit. This is what we in SSS. These are the things that we do, and that is create and delete groups. You will manage the groups, but we'll create them for you. You don't have that privilege. I wish there was a way that you could create your own, but there's just not. But generally speaking, we set up a group, and we may get into this later in a slide I've forgotten, but we set up a group for every school, and you're going to drop users into and out of those groups. So there'll be like let's say your HR, it'll be HR ATLM or something like that for Atlanta Metro. And you'll drop users in and out of that group. And those groups typically just correspond to their folder underneath your project folder, as well as they have access in that common folder to view what's in the in that common area.
So then when you request an account, are you going to include the IPs that are coming from? What's that for your firewall rules?
Oh.
How would you know what they need for firewall?
This should be open to all USG nets, so there should be no firewalls that we know of that are in it. When we set it up, the request was to open it up to all USG nets. So you cannot get it to it from your house, but if you're on...
Can you get to it on VPN?
I don't know. Can you? Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
So there's HR just expressed their interest, and so we're discussing, how we can get folks like Kaiser Permanente and Blue Cross Blue Shield into the system. You can create local MoveIt users and create like SSH keys. So your project could choose to skip the whole AD authentication part. But then we need to answer the question of, are we going to allow the whole world, China and Russia and all of our friends, into the MoveIt system, which has kind of traditionally been the case with a lot of the FTU sites.
still with FTUs, we're requiring authentication, though. There's one service that facility says license Ignite, and similar to this, but is there a feature in this which for a better way of putting this anonymous?
Yes. Yes, there is. We fake it, really. But I'll show you how that happens in one of these advanced topic slides.
So when we're training our end users to tag onto that comment, they can only use the service from their campus. They can't utilize it remotely if they're trying to do work at an off-site location. So they can only use their admin credentials from their campus.
Right. I think most employees have some sort of VPN on their campus. I could be totally wrong. But, you know, if an employee at Valdosta State were to connect to their VPN at Valdosta State, they would be on the USG network because that VPN would assign them a Valdosta State IP address.
Okay.
But if there's another state agency, like state auditors, for instance, or something like that, how do they?
Certainly, if they have an IP range, you know, that's real easy. We just, you know, ask the firewall guys to open it up to that little range. We're thinking that maybe a lot of these Blue Cross Blue Shield and Kaiser might be familiar with folks asking them, hey, can you give us your IP block? You know, we haven't asked that question yet, but it's probably a fairly typical question. For people like, you know, I don't know, I can't think of a good example, but, you know, surely people will say, well, can't we just get on from anywhere? We're road warriors. You know, we're just consultants or whatever, and maybe they want access. So we need to broach that topic as they come up. And in fact, we have a meeting this afternoon to talk about that because of HR expressing interest and and we're looking at the other FTUs. And if you all in IWS have any comments, we'd be glad to talk about that. So you can set it up to use FTP without the secure socket layer, without TLS. Nobody's had to. Okay, I don't remember. Somebody did have to do that, but what that requires is some very specific rules. We allow a single IP address to do that. Say it's a mainframe or something, and it doesn't know about anything new and cool. Well, there is a way to do that. We have to give it one IP address and restart the service. It's a little bit of a hassle, but that can be done if strictly needed.
The technology's been around for 15 years. Is it really new?
Is there a mainframe? That's new.
It might be no longer new when it's old enough to drink.
No longer new when the mainframe shut down.
So you'll request USO domain accounts like you request SharePoint accounts if you've ever done that. James is in the room. He's one of our Windows admins. And I think this slide is slightly wrong, but it's basically you supply a spreadsheet with the users, including the email, phone, and school name, to the Windows guys. Does that go through the help desk? Is that spreadsheet? So you supply or submit a ticket directly to Microsoft.
I mean, some of them do. Sometimes it does go through the help desk, or they submit it to us. You know, so really, it's I guess both.
And we are working on a form in SharePoint to handle all those kinds of requests, whether they're wanting access to SharePoint or some other service. And so they can just submit it that way.
Yes.
Where would you find that?
It's not, we haven't released it yet. We're still testing.
Are you talking about the new or the old?
The old spreadsheet's available in SharePoint.
Right. That's why I was asking her which one is she talking about.
I only know about one SharePoint service.
That's fine.
I just have trouble finding it.
I totally understand.
So I'm going to take a quick break and open these cookies. I don't know if y'all like cookies. I couldn't afford two good ones, so I got one Chips Ahoy and one Chipmate.
To answer your question, currently, the spreadsheet that you submit, Jane, is in SharePoint as collaborative resources, right? Collaborative resources is a spreadsheet on the,
I usually get people to send
front
me
page.
direct.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I have the URL, if you want me to send that to you, I can supply you the URL, because that's what I have to do, is send it. Yeah, because they give me a list of the tickets, and I say, here, please.
M&M's in it.
So you really want it as a spreadsheet and not a text file?
Exactly. The text file is no use.
So much for the diet today.
So within MFT, here's how you delete and create accounts. This is just a screenshot, but you're just going to supply the username, full name, and email address. Everything else, you'll leave blank. You can choose external only. The options here in this drop-down are external only, MoveIt, or both. You'll choose external only in general. If you're HR or you're setting up a script user to use, like, SSH or some automated process, in that case, you would choose MoveIt. And you would be prompted for a password. I suggest just putting a huge, ugly password in there and forgetting the password, and then setting up SSH keys for, a scripting user. You might be interested in the fact that when you create a MoveIt user and you set the password, you as a folder administrator cannot reset the password. You get to do that one time. If you, for some reason, need to reset that, what you can do is delete the user and create them again in MoveIt. You don't have to delete the AD side, just start it over again. And I'm not really sure why that is, but, it makes some sense. And certainly it'll be logged. So you couldn't, say, impersonate your user. I would think that a password change would be logged as well. Anyways, that's the fact. That's the way it is. And I suggest using the SSH key.
What about a scenario where the institution requests that an employee no longer have an account?
Well,
basically, who's responsible for making sure that the directory stays
on the way back.
Gets rid of people that we know not exist anymore?
not me.
Not me.
Oh, no. So you all are responsible for access. Within MFT, you remove the user out of the group, they no longer have access.
You have to, just as a side note, you have to be very careful when you ask for a deletion, because, especially from Active Directory, because you really don't know what access that account has.
Right.
So if you want them just to be out and MoveIt, delete them from MoveIt. Don't worry about AD. We'll deal with AD behind the scenes. We have some plans that if an account is not going to be in use for X amount of time, it'll slowly disappear. Okay, so don't worry about asking them to be deleted out of Active Directory.
Now, if we get like a security, sometimes we get these high priority security requests that they have nothing. Now that we could turn over to y'all, right, to go ahead and remove them in a situation like that.
What do you mean by nothing?
Like terminate.
Somebody says like, this person is a security.
Oh, termination?
Yeah,
Yes.
termination, and it's like
Yes,
a high up, and
that's
it's
fine.
like, get rid of them.
That's fine.
Okay.
Is that the Dave Disney kill switch? Okay.
So if you take them out of AD though, then they won't
They will not have access to this.
Right.
But there's no inactivate, it's only delete or create, right? You cannot inactivate somebody?
In here? Well, if you remove, I suggest that you don't give any privileges to a user, but put them in the group, and then you can just remove them from the group, and that'll, deactivate their permissions. When you remove a user, let's see, deleting, so here's at the bottom, deleting a user only removes them from your groups. So let's say you are able to create users, but if you create a user and then somebody in the GBES project or in some other project adds that user into their groups, then, that user needs to be there and you know, if you decide to remove them from your group, then you don't want to disable access. Well, it turns out that when you delete a user, it only, you know, if they're a member of another group that you don't manage, it won't delete the user for real. It'll only remove them from the groups that you administer, which is a really handy feature. And so you don't really have to worry about deleting users. It won't completely delete them out of MoveIt if they have access or rights that you don't administer.
Will you get an error if you're trying to delete and recreate them?
Yeah, it'll say the user already exists. Yeah. So if for that password thing I was talking about earlier, right. And don't specify a home folder. We don't need home folders. So here's the permissions screen. This is where the permissions are, and you can choose users or groups. Again, I recommend choosing a group and adding access to that group. So read means they can download from a folder. Write means they can upload to a folder. Delete is obvious. And list is just show the contents of the folder. Notify means it's set up to send an email to that folder if something is uploaded or downloaded. Users can choose in their preferences whether they want to receive emails, but you also choose that when you set up the user. I said you should leave everything by default, but you may choose to turn email notifications off. Within each folder, you can define what is considered new for that folder. You know, if a file comes in, consider it new for 14 days, or consider it new for 7 days. And that, I think that that plays into two parts. And one is when you log in, you'll see, log into the web, you'll see a listing of the new files. It may, what's considered new may affect the digest. Within each folder, you can choose whether to make notifications immediately or whether it should be a digest after that person is kind of done uploading after 20 minutes, then send a digest of all those files. Or after an hour, every hour send a digest instead of every nitty-gritty file. So this limited permissions, this is kind of to Ray Lee's point about this kind of blind uploads or anonymous uploads folder. When you give a user list permissions, they'll see what's in the folder. You wouldn't want that for, say, a bid submission folder that anybody can upload to. And I just found this while I was building this training these training slides. If they're granted the right permissions, and only the right permissions, they get list permissions by default. Just kind of, how do they phrase that? Anyways, they get the list permissions without, implicitly, that's what I'm trying to say. There's a little setting within the user, if you go in to edit the user settings, and it's called shared, the shared setting. And if that is on, if shared is on, then they will get that permission. I can't remember what the default is, but if you turn that off, this list is supposedly, this limited list implicit rule is turned off as well. So they can upload, but they can't see what they uploaded.
And so this anonymous access, this is a URL that's a person can send out to a group.
Yes.
People that are outside the system, University of Georgia, and they can upload one.
Assuming our firewall is opened up. Yes. Let's see. I'll just skip.
I have a quick question about folders. Can you, you said if we didn't need all of the default folders, we can delete them. Can we hide them if we want them back, or is it a hard delete?
Yeah, it's a hard delete. Or you could, remove the group access to it. But after by the time you remove group access, then you may as well delete it because it's just, pretty easy to recreate the folder. It's the access, all the clicking that I'm trying to save by, recreating all those things. By the time you start removing a bunch of access, then it's, might as well delete it. So here's a skip to the anonymous uploads folder, or slide. And this they call simple sign-on support. And what it means is in the web URL, you just have the password and the username stored in there. So you create a special user just for that purpose. Give that user access to a certain uploads folder, and put this transaction equals sign-on. And if you test it, you will be, your old login, if you were logged in, will be kind of wiped out. Just for that session, So here's the little trick. If you put the transaction sign off, you'll be able to log back in. Because when you click this button, it's kind of, you're dumped into there's no sign out. I don't know how I did that, but in my example, hey, look, here's the demo. We're going to go through the demo of this. So here's something I have on devusg.edu. I'm going to upload. So here's a link. Let's say this is upload files to us. You click on that link, got all that information put in. You notice there's no sign out button, so that's why I put that little pro tip that you can put up here in the URL, sign out, and then be able to log back in. Otherwise, you'll have to close your browser and I don't know what. So this is kind of what the real estate office would be using. And I'm gonna did I say sign off or sign out?
Sign out, I think is what you were saying.
In that feature, is there a way to do multiple file uploads, or is it distinct file uploads?
Yeah, there's, I don't know the answer to that question. For most users, for most users, I'll log in as me, and I think I've turned this off. There's this upload download wizard. It's a Java applet, and gross. I don't recommend anybody try to use that.
Gross meaning it fails most of the time, or just it's Java?
Well, yeah, you got to figure out your Javas and is that version right? I'm not a fan of Java, so I don't prefer to recommend it to anyone.
You're supporting your end users, right?
Well, that slide might be a tad wrong. I think I ended up sign out.
Is there a way you can put put a time frame that URL is live, that you can disable it after a certain?
I don't think so.
Okay, so once you create it, it's live, but you can go in and delete it after you're done.
Yeah, you could use the API to create folders and remove folders. That might be, it's not hard, but there's no kind of form, have it live at 12 p.m. and close it at 1. You have to kind of write your own little API, which, again, I probably have almost everything you need to do that. So with each folder, you have, you're able to hide the history. That is, from users, you can hide the log of who's uploaded what and who's viewed what, downloaded what. You can create image thumbnails or not. You can choose whether you want the file names to be unique. Each file gets an ID associated with it. So you could potentially have non-unique file names. You can choose whether you want to allow file overwrites or sort on a field other than date or name. You can choose for each folder whether you want notifications to be sent, and you have some options. You choose whether to clean them up after an hour or a day. I'm not sure if it's hour level. You can also allow certain file masks to say only don't allow files or do allow only zip files.
Capacity on each folder?
There is. Let's get in the demo. So this might be a little hard. I'm going to try to make it big for everyone to see. So here's some of those settings I'm talking about, and this is on a per folder basis. What do you want to sort, notifications, whether you want it to be in a digest, the cleanup options. Here's your folder quota. Don't allow more than 100 megs or something like that. You can also set, I believe you can set user quotas. I don't know of anybody that's kind of used that, but I think it's available, either folder or user quota.
So zero there means
unlimited, right?
Is that the default for all the
Yes.
folders being set up?
Here's the file mask, and then I'm not going to mention that. I'm not sure what that does. Although I'm sure if we self-explanatory. All right, here's more interesting stuff. That was boring. Keys to me are a little less boring. What keys allow you to do is automate transfers. You could write yourself a little cron job, a batch job that would push a file from the customer server up to MoveIt, or rather, let them create that. I wouldn't get involved in creating scripts for them, but this allows them to do that. And there's 3 different ways to import an SSH key, and that is when they first attempt, or when anybody attempts to connect with that user and an SSH key, it will go into what's called a holding tank, and that is in, if you click on the user profile and SSH policy, you'll see this screen. You can require a password and a key, and you can also do like, if you choose this IP host name, you could choose what IP and require a password and require the key that they should come from. But my guess is that probably an SSH key is good enough, just a single factor. It'll appear in your holding tank for 1 day. And since any person, anywhere within the firewall could submit a key with any user, I would recommend that you call and verify that fingerprint. Another way to import an SSH key is to just cut and paste it from an email. They can just put their public key in an email, or they can attach it as in the email, and you can just upload it to you choose this import button and upload that public key file. This is what I call normal SSH key looks like when you would like cut and paste out of an email. There's also one that's like begin SSH key, private key, or public key, and then end, kind of like a certificate. And then there's this kind of fingerprint business, and I think you can also just add the fingerprint.
So we as admins would potentially receive these holding tank keys. Are we given a notification that there's something in the holding tank?
I don't think you are.
But if it's only valid for 1 day?
Yeah. They would
So
really
would
need
have
to call you.
call us.
Y'all have to kind of discuss, hey, we want to set up this user for scripting. Right.
Got it.
What does our paper say about what we can talk about?
Yeah.
I think.
Can we make it into an airplane?
Oh, thanks. So, keys. So we've got API, MoveIt Central, WebPosts, anonymous, Ad-hoc. So I'm going to skip forward and then come back. I'm going to go over the help, just so we make sure to cover that. So Tier 1 is just for passwords and, help desk, if y'all could help us with that. Tier 2 is mostly you, the project admin. They'll come to you, hey, what folder should I use? Where should I put this type of file? It's important to note that users only see the folders that they have authorization to get into. So that's kind of convenient. And hopefully your folder structure is, clean enough that they don't have to ask a lot of questions about where to put things. And then if something's just weird or you don't understand how to do it, or the end user just, something's crazy, their client doesn't work, we can try that. If you all want to troubleshoot clients a little bit, just have them try a second client or a different FTP client, that would be helpful. But I think most FTP and SFTP clients that support, FTPS will work. And then we have this MFT-admin's email address. Feel free to email us there. There's this service brochure out on USG PeachNet, other services, managed file transfer. Kind of gives an overview of this service, and it links to the doc for you and then a document for end users. It tells them how they can connect, what server to connect to, and what to do if you forgot your password. It's pretty short, and it even lets them use the API if they want. Ad-hoc transfer is something that we haven't purchased, but I wanted to mention it in case, we have some angel investors in here that want to buy that. What it is it lets you get into Outlook and click attach, and instead of attaching a file into the email, it'll automatically upload.
What's doing, bud? What you watching?
Yeah, if any of you are interested, I can.
Love you.
Go ahead. Who's this? Okay. Yeah, if anybody,
now?
we can go into more detail.
Once I'm done with this call, I'll look at it.
It lets you.
Or actually, bring it to me. Yeah, bring it to me.
Lets you send like a package of files to a user via email. Even if they don't have this plugin installed, you can go into the web, build a little package, send the email, and the recipient will receive a link that, without a password or anything, without having a user account, will let them get in here. Of course, if they get into the web, they'll need to have that firewall all poked. But without having set up a user account in AD or within MoveIt itself, that recipient has access through the firewall. They'd be able to kind of view that package. WebPosts, you can have just a basic plain text form that submits to MoveIt, and you can view it in CSV, XML, or HTML format. Quick demo of that. So name, school, email address. Oh, we had thought about using this as a way to build our request thing. So everybody who sees this video is going to have my email address.
I'm going to do it anyway. It's on the web.
Yeah. All right. So
tricky phone number.
Yeah.
So you get, a confirmation screen, which is customizable, and over here in MoveIt, maybe you can see where that thing went. Don't know why my links aren't showing up, but WebPosts. Yeah, nobody's used WebPosts So I'd have to figure this out if you want to use it. Oh.
Not there yet.
I don't know. So demo fail. I don't know where it went, but that's the idea.
Demo 1.
Yeah, try going in demo 1. Demo 1.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Oh, here I am. I just had it pointing at the wrong place. All right, back to the presentation. So MoveIt Central, we have the license for. It's very useful. Ryan Ross is moving files uploaded by end users, automatically syncing those up into D2L, someplace in D2L that consumes D2L. Course.
The banner loads for every school.
So banner data getting into D2L. And it's been working. He's been doing it for a while. He was unable to attend today. I think maybe we should have him do another presentation and show us what he's doing with it and how he's doing it. But this little video gives you an idea. And we do have a few minutes left. Oh, it's 12 minutes, but we'll skip through it if we have to.
MoveIt Central is used to automate file transfers between different systems on your internal LAN as well as the internet and your external business partners. In this demo, we'll take a look at how to configure MoveIt Central for a traditional business-to-business file transfer and exchange of data. When you first log on to the MoveIt Central admin GUI, you're taken to the Host tab. The Host tab is where, as an administrator, you define the endpoints or the servers that MoveIt Central must connect to in order to push files to or pull files from those various endpoints. For our example, we'll be using two hosts. The first is just the local file system. So the local file system can be used as a source or a destination for a MoveIt Central task. If you take a look at some of the settings here, we won't go into these in too much depth, but there are configuration options to retry transfers if they fail for whatever reason, to be able to have file transfers kicked off on an event-driven basis by using file notification, even makes it simple to upload files with a temporary name first and then rename it after the file transfer has been successful. For this example, assume you are using MoveIt deployed on-prem in your DMZ, but this example applies equally to those with cloud requirements. And so you can see here how you would define a connection to MoveIt DMZ. MoveIt Central connects to MoveIt DMZ over HTTPS, so it's a very firewall-friendly connection. Doesn't require any additional ports to be opened up. You would provide MoveIt Central with a username and password that should be used to authenticate to the MoveIt DMZ server. Once again, the use file notification option is available on MoveIt DMZ hosts to kick off those file transfers on an event-driven basis. And of course, being able to specify retries in order to retry a transfer after a short timeout period if a transfer fails for whatever reason. So once you have your host defined, then the next step is to actually define the tasks. So tasks are where you really get into defining the various steps and the pushes and pulls that you want to have occurred on a schedule or event-driven basis. The first example we'll look at is a task that is going to automatically pull files that our partner has uploaded to MoveIt DMZ and subsequently save them to various internal file system locations. So you can see the summary. We'll skip over the schedule and come back to that. But if we take a look at the download step, so here we're referencing the host definitions that we defined on the previous host tab. So for the source for this task, we're going to pull files from MoveIt DMZ. You can click on Browse and browse right to the folder structure. No need to copy and paste folder paths from your command line to that host. You can specify, for example, which file masks you want the task to pull. In this case, we're just grabbing all files, star.star, but you can certainly build whatever file mask suits your needs. There's options if you need to recurse and include entire folder trees, to include subdirectories. After successfully transferring files, MoveIt Central can go back and either delete the originals, as in this case, or rename it, or perhaps do nothing if the files should still remain out on that source server. So that's the source where MoveIt Central will pull files from for this task. Now, the next step would be a destination. So this is the first destination for this task. And this is a real simple example. It's just going to take any files that were downloaded from MoveIt DMZ and save them out to a folder out on the local C drive. So it's just going to save them up to that local folder. This could just as easily be a network share, or could just as easily be FTPing them up to the mainframe. It's really irrelevant where the files came from. You can still send it to any destination host. In this case, we're using some of the macros that MoveIt Central makes available to administrators. For example, we're renaming this file on the fly with the current year, month, day, hour, minute, second. So being able to specify a timestamp as part of the name, and there's a whole list of macros that can be utilized to rename files as well as send email notifications. Now this task has multiple destinations, so we're using the second destination as a way to archive files. So this way, any files that this task processes will automatically be archived to this archive destination. So pretty much the same as the first destination, just a different folder path. And in this case, we're actually using macros as part of the folder path. So with the create directories if necessary option specified, this destination will go ahead and create a folder with the current year, month, and day as the folder name if that folder does not already exist, and even archiving these by the original user that uploaded the files to MoveIt DMZ. So making good use of those macros that are available. Tasks can also be configured with one or more next actions, essentially a step to take upon either the task or each individual file completing with either a success, failure, or no action in the case where you want to capture an event when the task runs but there were no files available to transfer. So in this case, we're using a next action on failure of the task so that we can alert an administrator to the fact that this task failed, and so that we don't have to provide the same information on each and every one of these next actions that we define. We're leveraging the global parameters. So there's the ability to specify global parameters and then reference them later on, in this case from a next action email. And so that this task will then run on a scheduled basis. We have a schedule applied to the task. This task is going to run every Monday through Friday when files arrive, but only between certain hours. So it won't just run flat out all the time. It will only run during certain specified hours. So at this point, we can go ahead and run our task. And then the status tab is where you can go in and monitor the status of what tasks are currently running on the system. Now, MoveIt Central is multi-threaded, so you can have multiple tasks running simultaneously. That way your file transfer jobs that are possibly transferring gigabytes worth of data don't hold up all of your other tasks that maybe just have to go out and transfer a few small files. So this gives you a view into what is currently running on the system, and then to get more of a historical perspective, you can, from many places, right-click on a task and select View Task Runs. And this will bring up MoveIt Central's report screen. So this report screen is where you can filter and query the audit records that MoveIt Central records each and every time a task runs. So right now we're filtered down to this particular task. We can see every time that this task has ran, as well as whether it succeeded or failed.
All right. Very interesting. but we're out of time. So, so you can move things with MoveIt Central into and out of FTP shares, CIF shares, other MoveIt instances, our MoveIt instance. You can have it sync, all the time, or you can sync one way, or you can delete the source, notify on failure, all sorts of handy things. And then we have the API to create you as a customer. We're using that to create folders, members, group membership, permissions, and everything. And here's just a little, this isn't all the full script, but you can see you kind of create an object. This is Perl, which is not supported, but they've got Java and Windows, which I didn't want to use. So Perl is working well for me. Sign on, have a user join a particular group, and then change their admin rights. That's kind of what you can do with the API. They say basically you can run reports, do anything. That's about it. I wanted to ask if anyone has any questions. Yes, sir.
So for our customers in the system office, is there a cost?
Recently, we decided that
In FY14? No.
I didn't find that.
Say yes now. Grandfather on 15.
I don't think so. We went over this with John and for the internal stuff at this point, and he did not make a decision to go forward with the cost at this point. So.
Pretty good.
Ray, could you use MoveIt Central maybe to do the start and end date restriction that you were talking about? Would you be able to use MoveIt Central to do those types of tasks?
I don't know. There's certainly a lot of scripts that MoveIt Central has that lets you transform and change data after it gets out of the source and then into the destination. I don't know if you're able to delete source directory. That might be kind of a nuanced use of it. You pull from the source and delete the source data. Even if it was from MoveIt DMZ to MoveIt DMZ.
Well, it's just the idea of having a time-to-live URL. So the particular case I'm thinking of is that facilities submit requests for proposals for buildings. So it goes out to architects, things like that. And they submit proposals, but there's a time frame for them to do that. And so they're using a product now called Ignite that allows them to manage that.
Here's another thought on that is within your CMS, you can control when those pages appear and disappear. So you can control it from the CMS side.
Yeah, that's true.
And while, if a person clicked the link and then, remembered or thought, hey, I need to copy this link so I can use it after 1 p.m.
That's true. I think they send the link out via email.
Yeah.
And they have a group of but they do publish it on the web page as well. So that's an option.
Instead of sending the link to the web page.
Right, yeah. They use this from now on.
Yeah. And then if he uses Central, could he not also do an email message that says, if you send a file after the submission time has ended, it could send an automated email message saying, your file's been rejected because it's now closed or something like that.
Maybe so. Well, at a minimum, even if they upload the file, you see the timestamp on there, and it could be uploaded and just not accepted because of the time.
And that's what they're using the time frame.
Just because they shove the file under the door, at the office doesn't mean that you're going to accept it. Same deal.
I have a question about, suppose a campus has submitted files and they somehow got deleted. What's the process, what's offered in terms of recovery?
We need to improve that process, but we do have backups of it, and we can restore it. In our normal backup, retention. I
It's
might
not
just
it's not,
self-service.
it's not copying and second copy of that file, so that only when the type of scripts go through, or schedule, that's it, right? If they uploaded a file at 10 a.m. and deleted it at 2 a.m., if the backup won't come through until midnight, it wouldn't be there.
That's correct.
So in order to do that, you have to use MoveIt Central and then schedule, and like the demo shows, schedule another copy to be placed somewhere if you want it, I guess 24/7.
And that's, I think, consistent with most of our services. You know, if you move something to D2L, I'm not sure if it has a, D2L might be a bad example, but it's kind of like a regular file. You can leave the file before that, that's coming to you. Right. I don't know if D2L special that way. No.
It's special, but not that way.
Any other questions? I hope that this was worth your time, and it is a little bit more than just a FTP server. You can do more things, and the logging is all very nice. So pretty secure system.
Presentation very nice.
Yep, thank you so much.
You get it extra. Thank you for coming.
If you want to end recording, just click on the record, and it should pop up again. It might be behind your...